What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Tribe of Millionaires podcast from GoBundance. I'm your host, Jamie Gruber. Today, I had in Matt King, who is the right-hand man for David Osborne, one of the founders of GoBundance, one of the largest real estate owners in the country. Very, very successful guy, inspiring guy, best-selling author. Matt really does have a huge hand in running all of David's operation. He's the guy behind the guy, and it was a great opportunity to bring him in and talk about being that integrator and what it is to execute at that level, and what skills you as a visionary need to look for in an integrator, or you as an integrator need to demonstrate for a visionary. A really all-encompassing interview about his life, his journey, some lessons he's learned along the way. He's got a lot of wisdom, but also learning tactically what it takes to be the type of integrator, the type of chief of staff that he is for a high-level guy like Osborne and all that he's accomplished. So check this episode out. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment. Let us know what you think about Matt King and the lessons that he taught in this particular podcast. And I hope you enjoy every moment of Matt King. So Matt, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jamie. It's an honor to be on the show, and it's really great to be talking to you in this kind of capacity. I mean, I've gotten to know you over the last, 2 to 3 years. Oh my God, Santa Claus is walking outside with a suitcase. Sorry, dude, I just got so distracted.
Look at this. Hey, Santa.
Sorry, dude.
All right. You want to start that again?
No. So I'll just, it's been an honor to get to know you over the last couple of years. It's cool to be communicating with you in this environment. We've gotten to do something similar for the Emerge program, which you launched through GoBundance probably about 12 months ago now. And we got to have that little fireside chat on the couch at the McCarthy's house where we talked about, my 9-figure boss. But it's also fun to see you growing personally too, and doing different things and being a part of the journey you're on as well, and learning from you every time we communicate. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, likewise in all of that. I appreciate you saying that. So let's start with your backstory. You didn't wake up one day and, become a chief of staff here. What's the route of Matt King to where you are today?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Wisconsin, small town just north of Milwaukee, about 30 minutes north of Milwaukee. 2 great parents, younger sister. Very competitive athlete growing up, always wanting a challenge, always wanting more. I was actually talking to somebody today about it. I hate the idea of losing more than I like the idea of winning, because it's just an expectation that I've had from a very young age that I'm going to win. So if I win, it was always like, okay, cool. And if I lost, it was like devastating and crushing and demoralizing. Grew up, went to high school, obviously started going to college, and quickly learned that I could be entrepreneurial or I could be educational based. And for me, the two didn't really work well together. So I was running a company out of Wisconsin doing custom shirts and vinyl signs while going to school. Decided that I no longer wanted to go to school, wanted to launch my own business, and quickly realized I could spend $3,000 to write a paper, or I could make $3,000 printing t-shirts for a run for a hospital up in Wisconsin, and started doing my own business. Along the journey, I started working at a country club, and it was one of the most important things that I think happened for me, because I was able to meet people who were what I determined in my life at that moment in time successful. And success for me in that moment was people that had money. And in order to be in a country club, generally speaking, you had to have money. But I'll never forget this one guy. He gave me a really great lesson one day. We were just collaborating. I worked in the locker room as the shoe boy. So I just shined people's shoes and cleaned their golf shoes for a living, which was really cool, really unique. And he was asking me, like, what do I want to be? And we were talking, and he looked at me and he said, I just want you to remember there's a million ways to make $1 million. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? He's like, look at me. I think he was like a 45-year-old Jewish white guy, really nice, really down to earth. And he had created a hair care product that happened to go viral for African-American individuals. And Walmart picked up his product, and it absolutely blew up. They ended up buying him out of the product, but he created it by accident. And his point in telling me that was just to continue to choose along your journey, and amazing things will show up for you. And what I did was I just took that lesson to heart and said, there are a million ways to make $1 million, but you have to choose, and you have to continue to choose. And so the most important thing that I did along my journey, Jamie, was make choices to be around great people and to do things that stretched me as a human being. My girlfriend at the time, when I dropped out of college, was going to the University of Minnesota. She said, hey, I'm going to go teach in the inner city schools of DC. I don't know what happens with us. I'm like, oh, well, I'll move there with you. So I sold my silk screening business that I had started, felt like I was richer than, I knew what to do with, because I had like $25,000 to my name, and thought I was this amazing, cool 23-year-old kid driving a BMW, which was a stupid purchase, but I did it anyways. And we moved to Baltimore. We lived in Baltimore for the summer while she went to training. And then we were going to decide if we were in Baltimore or DC, depending on where she got placed and what school she got placed in. So it was a very short gig. We were in Baltimore, and I looked up, like, how can I give back? Like, in my mind, I had achieved success. I had all this cash. I was so cool. Like, look at me. And I was like, oh, what could I do during the day to keep myself busy? I don't want to go find a job because I don't know if I'm going to be in Baltimore, DC. Like, they're close, but they're not close enough to drive and every single day in my mind. So I went on Craigslist and found an ad for a camp that was hiring counselors that would give you a $500 stipend for a 2-week camp to work at a camp for children with incarcerated parents. It was in walking distance from this apartment that I had sublet. And I was like, oh, that's a cool way to give back. I'll go do that. Long story short, one day we're taking the bus. We're taking our mentees on the bus from Baltimore to Washington, DC. And this guy gets on the bus named Pat Hyben, and he and myself are mentors for the 4 or 5 kids in our little group. Like, we're chaperones, we're the liaisons, make sure these kids don't get in trouble for the day. You're going to ride on the bus, you're going to take them around the National Mall, and then you're going to get back on the bus, come back. So we're sitting on the bus. I'm 23, think I'm like, greater than life because I've got some cash and I'm giving back. And this guy sits on the bus. I'm like, hey, I'm Matt. What's your name? He's like, I'm Pat. Like, oh, cool. Like, what do you do? He's like, I'm an investor. I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go. One of these guys. Like, what does that mean? Like, I'm just a small town kid out of Wisconsin. I didn't know what that meant. He's like, I'm a real estate investor. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm like, I'm a big believer that there's something to learn from everybody. So my first intuition was like, what about this guy? But if it's the janitor in the hallway at a hotel, like, there's a lesson I can learn from them if I'm willing to extract it. So I just remained curious with them. We hung out with our kids all day. We were playing, we were having fun. I was getting to know him. He was getting to know me. We were seeing, these kids experience DC, which they lived an hour and a half away from or 2 hours away from, that they'd never been. And we get back on the bus and I'm asking him more questions. He's like, yeah, I was a real estate agent. I became an investor and I started buying homes and I owned rental properties. And I'm a New York Times bestselling author. And immediately I was like, oh, one of these guys, like a New York Times bestselling author. So I went on Amazon. And I mean, Amazon, this was like it would have been 8 years ago. Amazon was like a thing, but it wasn't like a thing like it is today thing.
Sure. Yeah.
I remembered I ordered a book on Amazon. I get it like 3 days later. And it's his book, 6 Steps to 7 Figures. And I read the book from front to back in 24 hours. And I sent him a little Twitter message because that's what you did back in the day. And said like, hey, I read your book from front to back. What would it take to get coffee with you? And he's like, holy shit, you read it in like 24 hours? Like, let's go have lunch. And I started picking his brain and just stayed engaged with him. We moved to DC, some things happened. And all of a sudden we stayed in a relationship. He's like, hey, what would it take to get you to come work for me? I've got some cool little projects. I think you could run these. I was like, oh, that'd be really cool. I can learn from you. I can grow, whatever. So I did that. He then said, hey, I want you to go volunteer at this GoBundance event. I own this mastermind group called GoBundance. And I was like, mastermind? I don't even know what the heck a mastermind is.
Illuminati. Yeah,
exactly. So I flew down to Florida and he's like, you're going to stay in a 10 or 11 bedroom house. Ricky Williams coming, my business partner and best friend, David Osborne's coming. It's this amazing, beautiful mansion in Orlando and you're going to sleep on the floor on the couch, but you'll just volunteer all day and it'll be fine. I'm like, all right, well, sure, I'll do it. You're my boss. I'll do it. Whatever. I'll go learn, see what this is all about. I mean, it changed my life, man. I met Rock Thomas. I met David Osborne. I met Ricky Williams. I was volunteering from 6 a.m. till probably midnight every day, sleeping on the couch, making sure the chef had the meals ready, like being in these conversations about money and health and freedom and family. And I mean, like my mind was blown. And David and Rock went to play golf and they knew I was a big golfer. And they said, hey, do you want to come golf with us? I said, I'd love to golf with you guys, but I'd rather caddy. I'm like, that's fine. You can caddy. We don't care. Like, whatever. But why don't you play? I'm like, no, I'll caddy. So I was standing on the back of a golf cart listening to 2 like very, very successful, motivated, driven human beings talking about how to become even sharper versions of themselves. I was like, what the heck did I do right to end up in this spot? And it goes back to like what that guy at the country club said was just keep making choices and just keep kind of serving and the world will show up in unique ways. Long story short, volunteered at a couple GoBundance events, had rewrote my 5-year vision that I lived in Austin, Texas and worked for David Osborne. Love Pat to death. He's taught me so many great, valuable lessons. He was in a place in his life where he was like, hey, I want to be a retirement guy and I want to kind of just do my thing boogie around Carolinas on a bike and hang out and have fun. And David was still wanting to grow his organization and on a rocket ship. And where I was at in my life, that opportunity was more appealing to me than coasting. And so I rewrote my 5-year vision, said I live in Austin, Texas. I work for David Osborne. And without even telling him this, 2 weeks later, he called and said, "Hey, what would it take to get you to Austin? I think you're really talented. My world's a mushroom cloud getting ready to explode. And why don't you come check it out?" I was like, "Wow, shit, I've never even been to Texas. Like, this is how small town Wisconsin." I was like, "I've never even been to Texas." So my wife and I came here, fell in love with the city, fell in love with the opportunity, still worked for Pat for a while I was working for David, transitioned the stuff I was doing for Pat off to another team that I helped put together with him to make sure I didn't leave him hanging. Still have an amazing relationship with Pat. Talk to him probably twice a month and love the guy to death. And now work for David. Have been here for about 7 years.
Now, when you came to work for him initially, was it in a capacity of being, like, hey, you're going to run all my stuff, or how did you step into that role? What was the first thing that you were doing?
Yeah. So David looked at me and said, "I think you're really talented. I'm not really sure what you can do for me, but if I'm right, you'll figure it out." I was like, "Oh shit, that's like interesting." So it would be like a football coach saying like, "Hey, I think you're talented. Go on the field. I don't know what position to put you at, but like, you'll figure it out." And so when I started with David, he had a couple EAs, one of which Terry Rose was like one of the greatest mentors for me in the business world to just understand systems, processes, communication, etc., organization. And I was just like this third wheel that they brought in that was this young kid. And they were like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And so like very early on, I was working out at David's house. I saw like he was always late for meetings. I was like, "Dude, like, for a week, this meeting's at 9. You know what the traffic's like in Austin. You know the roads you're taking every day to get to this coffee shop. Like, how are we late?" So I started like looking at it. I'm like, "Oh, he's always late because he can't find his sunglasses. He can't find his wallet. He can't find his journal." I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. Like, well, what if all of those were there?" And so what I started to do is I started to back his car out in the driveway, park it facing forward. So all he had to do was put it in drive and go. I put his sunglasses in there, I put his work journals in there, I put his wallet in there and said, send him a text and said, "Hey, your car's ready to go. Everything's in there. Have a great meeting." And all of a sudden, like, he started being on time for meetings. And I was like, "Holy shit, I wonder where else I could do this." So we started doing it with emails. We started doing it with deals. We started doing it with personal stuff. He'd be like, "Oh, I'd really like a place where I can play Xbox with my wife and my daughter." My daughter, Bella was probably, 8 at the time, 7 at the time. And she was just getting into Minecraft and he liked how it made her creative and taught her how to build stuff. He's like, "Oh, it'd be cool to have like a setup where we could all play Minecraft." So I like called in like electronics guy. I was like, "Hey, can we get 3 TVs or 3 Xboxes that can all LAN into each other so they can play on their own screens, but have like a family bonding experience?" One day he came upstairs, he said, "What the heck is going on here?" And I'm like, "He said you want to play Xbox and Minecraft." And he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is like really cool." And it got to the point where I think there was a moment where he started to be a little careful about what he said around me, because I was like, "I'm going to take what he said. I'm going to make it a reality as quickly as I possibly can."
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it started off literally as like me just being the water boy. I'd go to all the meetings with him. I just sit there quietly, never barely say a word, take notes, take copious amounts of notes, listen, journal about it, what would I do if I were asked, what would I do? Like, started playing role playing in my own head. And slowly, like, the conversations in the car became like, "Well, what do you think I should do? What do you think?" And slowly I started to like kind of get put in the game, if you will. And then, each day to this day, I still have to earn the right to stay in the game. Like, at any moment, at any time, somebody else could come up behind me and be a better version of me. It's like an NFL quarterback, like Aaron Rodgers. I'm a huge Packers fan. Like, shoot, they go and draft his replacement. What does he do the next year? He goes and becomes the MVP. Like, that's how I live my life. And that's how I still work to this day. But it started off as like, "Dude, fill up my water cup, make sure I got some coffee." And I knew that if I surrounded myself with the right people, amazing stuff would show up. And so, I just continued to serve, and when my number was called, I was ready to play.
Talk a little bit about that. There's a couple things I want to come back to, but I want to talk a little bit about this service. So I said at the beginning here that, your name is sort of synonymous, like used as I don't know, an adjective, a verb, whatever. But like, people will say in GoBundance quite a bit, like, "Hey, I'm trying to find my Matt King," right? You're kind of known as the gold standard of chiefs of staff or chief operating officers. So as an integrator, which is what I view you as somebody who is that integrator for maybe a visionary, or for somebody that's building a business the way, at the size and scale that David is. What are some of the things that you think? I mean, you mentioned about this service piece, and maybe it starts there. Like, is that something that you do, or something that you are? What is that? Like, what are some of the things that you feel are essential if you were giving advice to another person who's about to start this journey as an integrator for an Osborne type organization? What are some of the things you would tell that person that you've learned in your time, or that you've done that's made you so successful?
I mean, it's a great question. I think like the first thing I would answer was like, that service-based individual, like leading with a servant's heart. I think you either are that or you aren't that. Now, like everybody can change over time, Jamie, but as we were talking about before we started the recording, like I equate it to kind of like healthy versus unhealthy people. Like you can go on a crash course diet and lose 15 pounds, but if you don't truly change the framework that got you to be overweight or out of shape originally, like you're going to end up back there. And the same is true with a servant-based individual. Anybody can stretch and do something for a certain period of time, but at some point that willpower will run out, the tank will be on empty, and your true colors will show up. So as a visionary, I would always coach people to say, look for somebody who's worked at a restaurant, who's worked at a country club, who's worked in a daycare, who's cleaned bathrooms. Like look for somebody who's been in a role where they've been required to be a servant-based individual, and look for a track record of success there. Because really what an integrator is sort of a servant-based leader for the visionary.
Yeah.
Like it's the backup quarterback, right? Like I've got to make sure every time David goes in the game, he's prepared to play the game. And I have to be prepared to step in if I get called on. And when we win, the backup quarterback's not getting the credit. And I don't want the credit. That's not who I am as an individual. So I think I would always say like, you've got to find somebody that's servant based, like willing to lead and be of service. I mean, the really cool thing about David is David's servant minded as well. Like there's days where I'll walk out of his house and he'll grab my lunch bag. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, let me carry your lunch for you. You do a lot for me. Let me do something for you too. And I'm like, wow, that's really nice. Like who the heck am I to have you carrying my lunch? So I think people either have it or they don't have it. The other thing I would tell somebody that is getting an opportunity similar to the ones that I've been lucky enough to land, was don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to not be heard. Like, I think a lot of times people get put in situations where they feel this great desire to be heard. And the only way I can bring value to a opportunity is if I talk. Like, I mean, I think sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who sit silently in the meetings taking notes, because they're the ones that are processing it on probably an even greater, deeper level than anybody doing the communication. So I always tell people, like, don't be afraid to just be that fly on the wall and listen and take notes and observe and just be present and an absolute sponge of information. Like when I was in the car riding places with David, he'd be on phone calls talking about short sales and foreclosures and deals and prefs and promotes and carries. And I'm like, writing down all these things or Googling them on my phone while he's going, because I didn't have the slightest idea what half of these things were. I'm not like this Harvard educated guy who was like, here's a family office, go figure it out. And so, I would coach people to like not be afraid to be humble and curious in the role. Like today, Jamie, we were talking about the videos you're doing, and you said, you were telling me about the videos. I'm like, what is that? I never heard of that. And I'm always still to this day try to be that curious person. And I think that's one of the things that's helped me in the role. I'm not afraid to call a lawyer and say, like, I don't understand this. Explain this to me like an idiot would understand it. And like, if I still don't get it, I go like, try again. That wasn't like, I still don't get it. And then I think, finally would just be having a growth-based mindset. I think one of the unique things that happened when I started working with Pat, and happened when I started working with David, is I had that entrepreneurial spirit as well. So being the jet fuel to an entrepreneur who's already taken off the runway is exciting for me, because it shortens my curve. Like I don't have to they've already experienced all the failures. I get to jump on board once they've already taken off, which is kind of selfish, but I don't have to have all those same failures that they've had because I'm on their ship that has already experienced the failures and overcome them. And so I would tell people, like, don't be afraid to be growth minded, and remember that the situations that they've come from, they've already learned a lot of the failures. So don't be delusional to think like there aren't still going to be more failures, but like having that growth mindset and that desire to be entrepreneurial inside of an organization, I think is one of the most powerful things that an integrator can have. And it's very uncomfortable and it's very scary because you're not the visionary, but like you can find unique ways to do it in a smaller, less risky scale, day to day with tasks that you're given.
Is there anything that comes to mind for you that gives an example of that? Is there anything that jumps to mind that you've had the opportunity to maybe, it sounds like, I don't know, put your spin on or have some entrepreneurial work within the framework of this entrepreneur's organization?
So managing David's calendar and my calendar is like a zoo. Like there's just stuff flying around and time zones and appointments and all this stuff. And I absolutely hate it. Yeah. But it is so important for an entrepreneur who's moving fast. When I think of Pat Hyben or David Osborne or Wally Alliberry or you or Chris Ryan, like your calendar becomes your Bible. Like your wife says, like, what are you doing today at 11? And you don't go like, oh, here's what I'm doing. You're like, let me look at my calendar. And you like pull up your calendar on your phone. But I hated it. And it was so important to have the details and have the details right and the time zones right. So like I recognized early on the importance of David's calendar and how we managed it and the intention behind the decisions we made with his calendar, but also the descriptions that went in there. But again, I hated it. So I was like, who can I hire that won't cost David a lot of money that can help us do this at a really high level? And I quickly learned that I could offload that to a virtual assistant who owned it, loved it, was very detail oriented, loved creating the systems and the templates and the processes. And I could literally just forward an email to her and say, David's calendar, please. So it gave me an opportunity to be entrepreneurial as to like, how do I solve this problem inside of his world that relieved me of something that I hated to do, but it was super, super important.
That makes perfect sense. That's a great example. I love that. Okay. If you were to flip this around, well, actually, I'm taking this a step back. The service-based individual, I think, is really interesting because I agree with you that I think it's a have or have not. I took this course once called, I think it was Sacred Gifts or something like that. Okay. And they described service as a gift. And they go through and describe what that looks like in play, like in day-to-day life. And it made me realize I don't have that gift. I don't have the gift of service naturally. And this is the example they gave. Because I've done this, and people listening, I mean, maybe this resonates with you. You would be the type, knowing you would be the type that walks into, say, a room getting ready for a party that's getting ready to get set up, tables and table toppers and chairs and all that stuff. And you'd see stuff being done, and you would see the opportunity to maybe go grab some chairs and put them on the tables, or, oh, you need more silverware sets. They're all wrapped over here, and just kind of hand them out. I wouldn't see any of that happening. And people might look at that as being flippant or even narcissistic in some ways, right? Like, oh, wow, he was too good to help out, but I just don't see it. It doesn't occur to me that I could insert myself here and help out, or cleaning up after an event. Everybody's cleaning up. I walk in and it just doesn't occur to me like, oh, I should probably help out. Not all the time, but it's just not something that naturally comes to me. With you and another guy I know named Darren Prince. I've talked to you about him. He's an agent for huge celebrities. Yeah. Same thing. What's going on, everybody? It's Jamie. I'm jumping in real quick here because some people are listening to this podcast thinking, man, I hear this guest. I hear what they're talking about. This whole GoBundance thing sounds pretty cool. I'd love to be a part of that. And I would say to you, if you are qualified to be part of GoBundance, you're a millionaire or accredited at the very least, jump onto GoBundance.com and just put your application in. You'll get on a call. It might even be with me, where we can talk about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and what it is to be part of this community in depth. Would love to have a conversation with you about that. It's been just so life-changing for me. And for those of you out there that are saying, yeah, sounds great, I would if I were a millionaire or if I were accredited, but I'm not there yet. We've got that now. We've built a program and I run it. I love being a part of it. I left my job for it, called Emerge and Ascend. Emerge is where you got to start. It's a 12-week intensive sprint goal-setting course. You're going to get curriculum every week. You're going to get live intervention every week. You're going to get connection with GoBundance members every week. You're going to get accountability from like-minded people every week. Jump into that. kill it, and we invite you to ascend, which is essentially the GoBundance Mastermind without the $1 million requirement. And we actually even add in coaching to help folks find their purpose, their mission, their values. It's intense. It's everything all wrapped in one. So again, if you're a millionaire or you're at least accredited and you're wondering about this GoBundance thing and that shouldn't I, just apply. Throw your name in. You lose nothing. All you do is put your name into an application form, you get on a phone call, and then you decide. If you're not yet at that $1 million mark, look at Emerge, gobundance.com/emerge. And what you can do as well is drop my name in there, Jamie, Jamie, and we'll knock $200 off the tuition for Emerge. Jump in there and we'll get you started on your journey toward being a whole life millionaire, toward getting to GoBundance, whatever you want. People in Emerge, people in Ascend, people in GoBundance all report back often the changes it's made in their lives financially, relationally, and everywhere else. So go to gobundance.com, check all of that out, see wherever you are, dive into that particular area of GoBundance, and we'd love to see you inside of the tribe. Now, back to our show. Does not have a huge brand because he loves being the guy behind the guy. He loves the gift that he has of service and executing that, just like you do. So I just wanted to spike that football a little bit because I agree with you that service and that it's a gift. It's an absolute gift. And if you don't have it, I don't know, would you say, tell me if I'm wrong here, I might not want to be an integrator. I might not want to take on a high-level entrepreneur's world if I don't have that gift. Fair, or am I being too?
Yeah, I would say you might not want to take it on for a long period of time. Like you might want to take it on for the opportunity to learn and grow and be educated, but take it on with the understanding of willpower is a fuel tank. I think Ben Hardy wrote, willpower won't last or something like that.
Doesn't work.
And basically the concept behind that is like you can will yourself to do something regardless of the situation, but at some point you will burn out. So if you do not have that gift, it's just like one of your greatest gifts is like you can find commonality with anybody you talk to. Like you're very, very, very good at communicating, creating relationship, creating connection, and then following up with that. Like you like that. I absolutely hate it. I can do it, but I hate it. So I don't
text you after. I'll text you right after. No.
Yeah. You will, and you'll send me a picture. And then I don't like that. So I think like the greatest gift is not necessarily like having the servant-based mindset. The greatest gift is understanding what your gifts are and just maximizing them to your fullest potential. I'm fortunate that one of the greatest gifts I think that I learned from my parents and my grandparents and probably some of the circumstances in life is like, I'm a team player. I don't really take things personal, and I'm a service-based individual, and I got lucky enough to fall into an opportunity with Pat, that got lucky enough to fall into an opportunity with David that has just been really, really a great blessing for myself and my family, and a great opportunity for me to learn and grow. Now, if David would have called 5 years ago and said, hey, I think you'd be a great salesman for me, I might have still said yes to that opportunity, but I don't know that I'd still be here because I would have gotten burned out.
That makes sense. See, and I say the greatest gift is a well-timed text GIF of an image that's funny. That's what I say.
That's what you say.
But that's just me.
I don't even know how to do the GIF thing on my phone.
You're a young man. You should learn this technology. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. All right, let's flip this around. So if I'm a visionary and I'm looking for, like, I've gotten myself to a place where I need this integrator, this chief of staff, that sort of thing. I'm looking for some of the things you've already described. I want somebody who is service-based, who notices the details, the little things, who, oh, wow, they did this for me and, put my stuff in my car and pointed it out the driveway like you did. That mindset. I'm looking for that. I'm looking for somebody that might be a little bit more, lurks in the shadows. They're listening. That sounds terrible, but they're listening, they're absorbing. They're not necessarily out there, just talking all the time. But you see that going into action, like, oh, they really were listening, right? You're looking for that. I'm looking for somebody who's got a growth mindset, who has that entrepreneurial spirit. All of that's great. What else should a visionary, if anything, would you give advice to a visionary to look for, skill set wise, mindset wise, maybe even experience wise, if any, in that ideal integrator, getting their Matt King? How do they find you?
Yeah, I think, so there's two questions that you've asked. One is, how do they find that person? And then what else should they look for? Like, how do you find that person is what I'll answer first. And the way I'd answer that is like, we all go to restaurants. We all go to places where we have to provide service. Like, I can give you a perfect example. So this week, Tuesday, my wife said, let's go get a Christmas tree. So it's me, my wife, my 2.5-year-old, and my 6-month-old at Home Depot at 7:00 on a Tuesday night, looking for Christmas trees. because the other Christmas tree farm was too expensive. And I was like, this is a 6-foot tree. I'm not paying that much money for a tree, but whatever. It doesn't matter. We go to Home Depot and we meet this kid named William. He's 20 years old. He's worked at Home Depot for 4 years. He's on the shotgun club for a little local college in our area. And you ask me how I know all this stuff. I recognized immediately when I met William and he offered to go back to the crated trees in the back and find us one of the things we were looking for and bring it to the front, that he was a servant-based individual that was willing to do whatever it took to help make people happy. So I knew immediately that that was somebody that we in David's world could hire to do something for us. So I immediately started to connect with them. I immediately started to build a bond with him. I've got his phone number, gave him a $20 tip, which I had to slip under the counter because he said Home Depot fires him if he gets a tip, which is absolutely ridiculous because he was the most amazing person I've met. And I've started communicating with him via text because I recognized immediately at Home Depot getting a Christmas tree that that's a servant-based individual. And I can't train somebody to have that servant heart. Like I can't teach that. I can teach him anything else. Like I can teach him how to build a spreadsheet. I can teach him how to look at P&Ls. I can teach him how to manage the calendar, which I hate to do. You know, I can teach him those things, but I can't teach him that servant heart. So I would tell a visionary, everywhere you go, you're going to be in opportunities and situations where you'll see people who either have the servant-based heart or don't. You'll go to the restaurant and be like, this server sucks or this server's great. They didn't write down my order and they brought me an extra Diet Coke, or they did write down my order and they forgot I didn't want onions on the burger. You'll be able to start to see those patterns and those habits, and you'll be able to start to know what you want in your integrator when you're hiring them. Do you want somebody that writes down your order and asks you a million questions? Because you might. Do you want someone that doesn't write down your order, but you said you wanted burgers? You said you wanted a burger and a beer, so I'm just going to bring you the fries anyways. That might be what you want. And start to recognize the people that you see on a daily basis in those servant-based roles, and then start to recruit them. I mean, Hal Alrod, I think Tiffany's been with him, I don't know, 6-7 years. I think she was a server at a restaurant. I think that's how he met her, I believe, if I'm correct. William, I mean, shit, I hope we can hire William. He's, you know, I know all about him. He's going to take me and teach me how to shoot the shotgun my father-in-law gave me that I've never shot. I don't even know how to load or barely take it out of the box, but I'm going to go learn from William and give him a chance to show me his expertise and be humble enough to learn from him. And hopefully that leads to an opportunity for us to be able to bring him into David's organization and give him an opportunity to thrive in our area of expertise. And so I would tell a visionary that that's what they should be doing. And then you said, what other skill sets should they be looking for? The other thing I would tell you is like, find somebody that's humble. Like William didn't come out and say like, yeah, I'm on the college shotgun team and like, get your own damn tree. William was quiet. He was humble. How can I help you? Your daughter's adorable. Like he was very, very, very humble. And I had to pry out of him what he's accomplished and what he does. And I think to be that sort of second in command, if you will, like, I think, you know, the man behind the curtain, however you want to call it, you have to find somebody that's humble and doesn't mind if they're not the one in the spotlight on the stage at the Super Bowl, holding the MVP trophy and getting the confetti. Like my point of view is like, if I'm the water boy and we win the Super Bowl, I get a freaking ring. Like, hell yeah, I'm in. Right. And there's a lot of people that I think that are like that. And there's a lot of people that aren't. So when you're looking for that integrator, having that humble person that's okay not being in the limelight is something to look for too.
As an integrator, do you fear being capped at all by being sort of a servant-based individual? It's an interesting question because at the same time, in my mind, David, you said, has this sort of a servant-based mindset. But is it, if I'm listening to this and I'm saying, man, I really resonate with what he just said, man, I'm a servant-based guy. So yeah, maybe I could, or gal, I can be that second in command, that man or woman behind the curtain, as you described. Is that my market cap?
I think the only market cap you have is the cap that you put on yourself and the choice you make to stop continuing to want to be more.
Well said.
I like that. I have infinite potential inside of David's organization because I'm willing to constantly continue to evolve as a human being and who I am inside of his organization without losing the DNA that I have, which is the servant-based individual. Yeah. So now it's to the point where like, I'm talking to the lawyers, I'm in the mediations, I'm doing these things. And if David needs water, I'll get him water. But I had to evolve as a human being. I had to learn those things. I had to grow as an individual to understand how to do those things. The only cap that I have in my life, And I think anybody is the cap that they put on their own life, the own limitations that they set in their own mind. Like, I mean, David's incredible, awesome, amazing entrepreneur. I've got like infinite potential with him and nowhere to go. And if Elon Musk called David tomorrow and said, hey, I'm looking for an integrator, do you want to come work for me? I bet David would think about it. Like, there is no cap. Like, there's always more, there's always bigger, there's always different. But the thing you have to do as a human being, and the only thing you can control as a human being, is to continue to choose to grow as yourself and continue to evolve yourself.
I like that. Well, that kind of circles back to what you said at the beginning, being a service-based individual, not being afraid to sort of observe, and growth-based mindset. So if you continue to grow, then your market cap is unlimited, period, no matter what your role is: integrator, visionary, service-based, not service-based, so on and so forth. That's awesome. Take me back real quick, a couple more questions, then we'll wrap up here. But what you talked in the beginning about being sort of, when you win, you win. When you lose, you're demoralized. With the people that you've been around, that you've observed, even for you, is reward something that, quick sidebar, I had a conversation with some people recently. They were like, man, the reward doesn't really fire me up. It's more like if there's a consequence, that's when I feel accountable. Is that what you are? Do you see that in successful people? Does it matter? Is it like reward or consequence, whatever drives you? Or do you feel like, is that something that you feel like you need to get better at? Or do you just say, no, this is me. I don't care about the reward. I care about, not losing. I don't care necessarily about, and I shouldn't say care. I don't get fired up by the win. I get fired up when I lose. And then that pushes me to the next win. Does it matter? Do you need to improve on that, do you think? Or is it just is what it is?
That's a loaded question, man. I mean, it's a really, really good question. And it has me like really deeply pondering. And my initial gut reaction says the reward is less relevant to me than the scoreboard. Because again, I want to win. So like, if it's like, hey, if we close this deal, you get, $50. Like, okay, that's interesting, but closing the deal is more important to me. So like, what is the score on the scoreboard? And then knowing the reward will fall into place is beneficial. Obviously, like, I've got that entrepreneurial spark, and money still is a driver for me. Like, winning is a driver, but money still drives me. It motivates me. It creates freedom. It creates choice. It gives my family opportunities. Like, money is important to me. But I don't do everything I do just for money. Like, a lot of what I do, I know that by winning, money will be a result of it, but I want to win. So like, I don't know that I need to work on it. I don't know that I need to grow on it. And I don't know that I'm actually even answering the damn question you asked me.
No, you are.
But it is a really interesting thing to ask. And I would say that like the people I've been around know that I don't like to lose. Like, we play card games with our friends on the weekends. Like, I don't lose. And I don't enter the card game with the expectation of like, oh, I might not win this. Like, you can ask our really good friends, Ryan and Tony, like, we play these card games with them. It's like, oh, Matt won again. Or like, we go somewhere with them and they're like, we saw you parked in the front row again. Like, how do you always find a spot there? And it's like, because that's my expectation. Like, the universe like knows that that's what I am going to expect. And I believe the universe, God, whatever you believe in, just kind of gives me that. Yeah. And so I don't look for the reward. I just know that I'm going to win. I don't know.
Love it, man. Weird. I love it. No, it's not a bad answer at all. I think that's perfect, actually. That's
I still win every card game too. It's crazy. Like, they know I'm going to win. And even if I have to stretch the rules a little bit, I still win. I don't lose.
It's that Michael Jordan mindset, right? Like, it's as much psychological as it is physical or your conditions on the ground, right? Like, he just knew that he was going to win. He's going to hit that shot over Brian Russell in the last NBA finals that he was in, right? He's just going to win. And it's the same spark that you have. I mean, you're not 6'6" and, able to dunk, but in your world, you're winning.
Well, I guess the cowardly side of me won't put myself in a position where I know I'd lose. So I wouldn't play basketball against Michael Jordan because I know I'd lose.
There you go. Good point. That's fair.
I want to win. So I'd be like, yeah, dude, you won. It's all good. I don't need to play.
I love it. The only other question I wanted to ask before we sort of talk about what's next for you is, you talked at the beginning about choosing the advice you got from the there's a million ways to make money, a million ways to make $1 million. Choose why. And you made choices that led you to where you are today. How do you go about from 22, 23-year-old kid to now being much more developed and have gone through a lot of growth and so on and so forth? What's your decision tree or your criteria in choosing anything now? Like, how do you go about making choices that serve you?
Yeah. So at that Go Abundance event in Orlando, I met Ricky Williams, who's the NFL Heisman Trophy winning running back who went on the hiatus, and, very interesting, deep, spiritual, kind of quirky, confusing human being. But there's so much wisdom in what he taught me when we were playing ping pong. And he told me, he's like, choice creates awareness. I'm like, okay, then what happens? He's like, you just have more choice. It's like, well, then what happens? He's like, then you just have more awareness. I'm like, okay, well, then what happens? He's like, you have more choice. And like, I always thought like you choose and there's a right or a wrong. And I don't know if that's how I grew up. I don't know if that's the education system today. I don't know if that's just who I was. I don't know if that's what I thought, but my decision tree today is very different than it was when I was 22 or 23, because I thought I was choosing for what's right and what's wrong. And what I've learned now is I'm choosing for awareness, which will give me more choice. So like parenting has been like the most challenging thing. Like my daughter, 2.5, today I learned she bit a kid because the kid in line wouldn't let her skip her. So she bit his foot. I'm like, well, that's absolutely not acceptable. But like, how do you parent that? Like, how do you teach that? How do you understand that? And so like, I make a choice on how to address it. And I'm not going to make the right choice or the wrong choice, but I'm going to see how she responds. I'm going to see if the behavior corrects, and I'll decide, do I make that same choice again, or do I choose something else? And that's just one example in my life. Like food is the same way. Like if you eat turkey, you get sleepy. So like, what are you going to choose the next time you're offered turkey? Like maybe I don't want as much turkey, or can you swap that with ham? Or like, so for me, like the decision-making tree is now like easier. I mean, there's still big decisions that are hard that you contemplate over that aren't this easy. But like for me, it's not about choosing what's right or wrong. And it will drive my wife crazy because a lot of times I'll make choices, make mistakes, and then have to like find a way to fix the mistake. I'll be like, oh, let's put the picture here, and I'll put a hole in the wall and be like, oh my God, that looks terrible. Like, why did I do that? Right. But for me, it's just choice, awareness, choice, awareness, choice, awareness. And the faster I can get from choice to awareness back to choice, the faster my life, I think, can continue to move in the trajectory I want it to go.
Something tells me that you were a little bit proud of your daughter.
Yeah, I don't know that proud was the right word. I did ask the nanny, what did the boy look like, and did he deserve it? And she's like, well, I was afraid to ask the teacher. I'm like, okay, that's a fair point. But I was like, at first I was like, I don't know, dude. I don't know what to do. Like she was trying to express that she was frustrated that he wouldn't move in line. And so she reacted in a way that's absolutely unacceptable. But the feeling she had, I don't want to kill. So how do I let her have that feeling of like, you're not moving fast enough, I want to go, because that's who she is. Like she's 2.5, like the world hasn't had a chance to mold her. And I want her to keep that and say, but you can't express it through bite. I don't know how to do that.
Well, look, every one of our kids, everyone listening that's had a kid at that age, mine included, that's what they do. They bite people. It's they're little animals at that point. And they learn over time, just through your teaching and coaching or whatever, how to react more appropriately, to your point, without losing. As a parent, you're going to coach her not to lose that tenacity, but she'll learn better reactions when she doesn't, get what she wants. Right now, it's just, nah.
That's like, I don't know. I have these emotions and I don't know how to express them. Yeah. So this is what the dog would do. Like, exactly. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Yeah.
Just a primal reaction.
Yeah.
So you're going to continue to grow, as you always have. You're going to continue to grow David's organization alongside him. What's on the horizon for you? What are you thinking about? Are there any projects, any ideas, anything that's sort of up and coming for you potentially that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is trying to become a better husband and a better father. Like always, like the business hunger, excitement is fun and easy for me. It's hard to shut that side off. And so when I'm home with my wife and my kids, it's hard to like be fully present. Like I need to do a better job of slowing down. So I'm constantly working on being a better version of myself for my family and for my kids, for my future. Because at the end of the day, that's all that's really going to matter is like, yeah, Dad, you were at all of our soccer games, but you're on your phone the whole time. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. Like that's not really who I want to be. And so like right now in my mind presently is how do I continue to be a better husband and a better father? And continue to make, different choices based on the awarenesses that I've had to date. I think, one of the things that, I've been thinking about with David and we've been collaborating about, for 3 or 4 years now is like, is what we have special or is it duplicatable? And if so, is it trainable? Can we coach to this? Can we teach to this? Can we consult to this? Can I help people find integrators? Can I help visionaries manage integrators? Can I help integrators find visionaries? I think that's interesting for me. I think I've always wanted to create something that's bigger than myself, that will live longer than me. So like finding that big project for me is still like on my mind, and how to do it. Where is it? What does it look like? How can it be? And then I think like the most important thing, man, is just to continue to surround myself with people like you, all the amazing guys in GoBundance, you know, the Pat Hybens of the world, the Mike McCarthy's, Tim Rhodes, David Osborne's, and like continue to try to be a better version of myself through what they have to learn to teach me, but then not being afraid to reach down and help some of my friends, for instance, and reach down isn't the right word, but like share the wisdom that I've been given with people that haven't had the opportunity to get that wisdom yet. So like I've got a really good friend who read that book right behind your head, Jamie, called Tribe of Millionaires. And he called me the next day and said, like, I want an accountability partner. What does that look like? And we set like a 30-day challenge. It was me, my wife, him and his wife. And we did a 30-day challenge, and it like kickstarted his like journey. He's lost a bunch of weight. He's reading books. He's analyzing real estate deals. And like all it did was I exposed him to some of this knowledge that I've been so lucky to get. And so like on the journey, I want to continue to try to pour back into people who maybe haven't got as lucky as I've gotten, and gotten to surround themselves with people who know some of this stuff that as a kid, I didn't have any idea. Like, you know, like I'm an investor. I'm a New York Times bestselling author. I'm like, oh God, here we go again. Like I say the same thing about David. Like the first time I ever saw David speak, he had a purple journal and he's stood in the front of the room. He's like, oh, this is my journal. And I was like sitting in the back. I'm like 22 athlete. And I'm like rolling my eyes going like, man, there's like a 40-some-year-old dude holding a purple journal in the front of the room. What am I doing in this room? And then he showed his vision board, and he's like, this was my vision board. And it had like a plane and a car, and it had like a boat and a family and these real estate pieces and all this cool stuff. And somebody raised their hand like, why did you say it was your vision board? It's like, oh, because all this shit came true. So my wife's making a new one. So like I immediately wrote on my notes, like order a purple journal, write my goals down. Like I was like, oh my God, like by entering into judgment, I lost all the opportunity to learn from these people. And I just hope that I can pour into people half as much as people like yourself, people like David, Pat, et cetera, have poured into me.
Lots of wisdom, man, at a young age, especially. I give you a lot of credit for all you've done and all that you think about, and just the wisdom that you espouse. So appreciate that from you. What's the best way to reach out or find out what you're doing or David's doing? Like, what's the best, where do you want to direct people to learn more about you, reach out to you, or?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. I deleted my Facebook.
Yeah, I know you did.
Didn't like the time it was taking from my life. I still have it. I just don't check it. My assistant locked me out of it. I'm on Instagram. Email me. I can give you my email. You can put it in the show notes. Look up David. I am David Osborne. I'm usually wherever he is. So if he's doing something cool, it means I'm in the background, probably doing something cool, having fun too.
Lurking, I say. Lurking.
There you go. Follow GoBundance. You know, just, yeah, I mean, I'll give you my email. I'm happy to answer, reach out if anybody needs anything, and be of service any way I can.
Amazing. Well, hey man, thanks for doing this. I know you're kind of locked down right now, having some COVID exposure within the family. I don't know where you're in, a hotel suite of some sort. Whatever it is.
Santa Claus was here though. You saw Santa. I saw Santa.
I did. I think we'll edit that out from it won't be part of the the whole entire production here. But no, man, I really appreciate you doing this.
Add it as like one of those like outtakes.
We'll do it at the beginning. Yeah. And Santa.
Thanks for having me, Jamie. And thanks for all you did for my journey. And thanks for all you're doing for all those other people. I mean, Emerge and Ascend and the programs you're building inside of GoBundance and the people you're pouring into. I mean, I wish I would have known about that when I was 17 or 18, because I think I'd be even farther on my journey than I am today. So
pretty well though. You're doing pretty well.
Keep pouring into those people. That's awesome.
Appreciate that, brother. All right, man. I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know down in the comments, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you can be informed on the next episode and other content right here on this channel. Thank you.